The intensity of the use of glide bombs on the Eastern Front is not decreasing. The Russian army drops several aerial bombs a day on Kostyantynivka and Pokrovsk. Thus, with the support of aviation, artillery and attack drones, the Russians are trying to infiltrate with infantry groups or even launch assaults using armored vehicles, as they did recently on the approaches to Mirnohrad. This city is a satellite of Pokrovsk. With us now live from the east is Maria Malevska, who is working in the Donetsk region this week. We will ask her about the latest details about the fighting in Pokrovsk and the general situation in this area and the evacuation from Kostyantynivka. Maria, so congratulations, I have a word for you.
Tanya, congratulations. Well, the most difficult situation is now in Pokrovsk. The Russians are continuing to advance in the city. The situation is so complicated that there may be defense forces fighters in one of the buildings and occupiers in the neighboring one. They infiltrate in small groups of 2 or 3, often disguising themselves in civilian clothes. The 7th Air Assault Brigade, which is responsible for the defense of Pokrovsk, reports that since the beginning of November, that is in just 6 days, the defenders of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, which includes Pokrovsk itself, its satellite city Mirnohrad, and the nearest villages, have managed to eliminate 284 occupiers and wound another 107. You are now seeing footage from the approaches to Mirnohrad. There, the Russian army launched an assault using armored vehicles, which is now a rare occurrence on the front line. The Marines of the 38th Brigade, together with adjacent units, are repelling the mechanized assault and report that 26 occupiers and 3 pieces of armored equipment have been destroyed. And now you should be seeing footage of the assault troops of the 425th Separate Regiment Skelya raising the flag in the center of Pokrovsk. Why is this being done? This proves that the city is not under the full control of the occupiers.
All right, everyone's alive. I see everyone. Everyone, get into the nearest building. Get the guys out of the tree line. Carefully check each other. Pat down to make sure there's no bleeding, because in shock you might not feel anything right away. Copy that, copy that.
More and more often, mortar crews or drone operators who usually work not on the front line but several kilometers behind it have to set up all-around defense and fight like infantrymen because the Russians are successfully infiltrating between positions, probing for weak spots in the defense. Overall, the number of enemy attacks in the Pokrovsk direction reached hundreds per day recently, which is several times more than in previous months.
The enemy most often uses FPV drones. In other words, they have a lot of them. It's like a conveyor belt. So we rely on intelligence, strength, and courage, while they simply rely on sheer numbers.
Unfortunately, the enemy isn't sleeping either. It would be better if they never slept at all. Of course, we hear both the FPVs and the KABs, but with the help of various devices, yes, we try not to risk the personnel and to do our job in such a way that everyone stays alive and, how to put it, completes their mission.
The situation in the Kostyantynivka community also remains extremely difficult. The day before, the Russians destroyed the central transformer substation in Oleksievo-Drushkivka, and now the village is left without water and electricity. Although in Kostyantynivka itself, the utilities have long been cut off. Every day, the Russian army fires several glide bombs at this ruined city, shells it with both tube and rocket artillery, and attacks civilians with strike drones, people who are simply walking down the street or riding bicycles or mopeds. More and more often, volunteers and the White Angels have to evacuate not only the living but also the bodies of deceased residents from the city.
Unfortunately, this is happening more and more frequently because Russian shelling continues even after the curfew is over, and people are once again moving around Kostyantynivka, going about their daily business. We often see cabs landing 200 or 300 meters away, FPV drones exploding 20 or 30 meters away, and artillery working 100 meters from us as well. So unfortunately, it happens quite often.
Russians are also shelling Kramatorsk and Sloviansk more and more frequently. In the week we've been here, there hasn't been a single quiet evening. They shell in the morning, during the day, and because of the danger of shelling, all trains and suburban electric trains to Donetsk region have been cancelled, so the legendary express to Kramatorsk no longer runs. The extreme point where trains reach is the Kharkiv region, the border of the Kharkiv region. That is, in fact, rail communication with the Donetsk region has been suspended since November 25th. Tanya.
Maria Malevska was in touch with us from Donetsk region. Thank you. We are joined by Svetlana Rezva, head of the communications department of the 25th Separate Airborne Syechislav Brigade of the Airborne Assault Troops of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Ms. Svetlana, I congratulate you.
Congratulations, Olena.
Mrs. Svetlana, well, let's talk about one of the most difficult direction today. This is the Pokrovsky direction. Please tell me, we have been saying for several days in a row, and probably for several months now, that this is the most difficult situation there. Tell me what the situation is like in these last few days.
The situation is difficult. It is indeed extremely difficult because the enemy has increased the number of assaults several times over. For example, since yesterday, there have been more than 30 assaults. The enemy is pressing. The enemy is trying to break into the city, to gain a foothold there, using a huge amount of manpower and not caring at all about their own manpower, and they're using a lot of drones. The situation is very difficult and dynamic.
Various sources have reported that the Russians already control almost 80% of Pokrovsk's territory. Is this true? What do you know about this?
I apologize, the connection, where are the Russians located?
On 80% of Pokrovsk's territory.
You can't really say that because there isn't a stable front line at all. There's no clear line by which this can be measured. Indeed, they are infiltrating the city. They are trying to gather sabotage and reconnaissance groups. Our task is to prevent their infiltration, disrupt their logistics, and ensure the clearing of the city. There is no clear line there to talk about, let alone percentages. The situation changes every hour.
I understand. Who are the Russians sending to storm Pokrovsk? What can you tell us about their training, about their equipment? There are many reports that they have thrown their best forces into Pokrovsk.
Indeed, they have been amassing these forces for a long time. Indeed, they have a task because Pokrovsk is for them another crucial city to capture. That's why they've gathered significant forces, and there really are many well-trained fighters. It's hard for us.
I understand. Tell me, as I understand it, the enemy primarily wants to cut off logistics for our military. How is the logistics situation now? How is the delivery of all the essentials to our fighters at the moment?
You could say that the main battle is happening precisely over logistics, because if there is logistics, there are reinforcements, there is support for our military. Indeed, the enemy has deployed a huge number of drones that are trying to disrupt any of our logistics, and their sabotage and reconnaissance groups are trying to locate and secure their own logistics. It's difficult. Most logistics operations now take place by air, typically using large and heavy drones, such as the Vampire and Bat types. Moving on the ground is impossible because all movement is monitored from the air, plus there are many drones they've stationed on the ground, and also a lot of mining. That's why moving there on foot is an extremely difficult task.
Mr. Svetlana, we almost always have the QR code for the big Friends of the Air Assault Forces project on display. Could you please tell us what your brigade needs most right now?
A huge thank you to the channel for your support. We are very grateful for this program. You are very helpful, and these funds help us provide ourselves with drones, because drones and all the components for drones are what our brigade and any brigade that is on the cutting edge of events needs the most right now.
Mrs. Svetlana, just yesterday the presidential decree was published. Volodymyr Zelensky has moved the day of the air assault forces from November 21st to the 8th. So tomorrow is your professional holiday. I understand that the mood isn't very festive, but what would you still wish your comrades on such a day?
To my comrades, more than anything, I wish for them to return to their families. And I want peace to finally come, the peace we so deeply long for and are fighting for. And I really want us not just to come home, but to come home with victory.
That's how it will be. Mrs. Svetlana, thank you very much. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your work. Joining us on air was Svetlana Razvan, head of the communications department of the 25th Separate Airborne Syechislav Brigade of the Air Assault Forces. In just a few minutes, the latest news of this morning.